Success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
How you Roast Growth listeners? Today I have David Tamm. He is the founder of CAS Services. I mean, the easiest way to describe it is everything technology-based. And if you're in any sort of real estate and need technology, you could probably find it at CAS Services. Thank you, David, for being here today.
Absolutely, man. It's an honor. By the way, I love that intro. That's fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So what's, I mean, I know I'll give a broad synopsis, but if someone's meets you in an elevator, right? Yeah. What's your elevator pitch and go, hey, David, what do you do? How would you describe yourself and your company?
Yeah, so I would probably start with myself, a serial entrepreneur in the tech space, former Air Force veteran and lifelong college student, author, athlete, all of the above. I have a fat corgi running around here, so I'm a newlywed as well, and I've got a little fur baby. So that's me. As far as the company is concerned, CAS Services, I like to say that we started as a digital marketing firm. We were doing all that pay-per-click, paid lead stuff, and really moved into research, right? So we had some data science PhDs that published some white papers with us that really drove our development track, which turned into custom websites, AI-driven SEO, and now we're working with some really high-level automation in the real estate space, but also in mortgage, title, new construction, land procurement, that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, you talked about it. I mean, you've worn a lot of different hats over the years. I mean, so let's rewind a little bit. And I mean, was there always like a technology mindset? Was there always the idea of getting to military? I mean, who was a young David?
Yeah, young David was, I have a brother and sister. I'm the youngest of three and grew up most of my young life in Boulder, Colorado. So really good school system. We were kind of on the lower end of economics, growing up in Boulder. And so that always created some drive in me to work extremely hard, right? Because my parents worked extremely hard as well, but, they had three kids in a really tough, economy. And so I started working full-time when I was 14 at Subway, and I've been working full-time ever since. And to answer your question directly, no, I played video games and I did a little bit of programming and stuff in high school. But I didn't really fall in love with technology until I joined the military and really saw what technology could do, for better or worse, right? Yeah.
So, okay, you're the youngest of three siblings.
Yeah.
You go to you're in school.
Yeah.
What I mean, you said you also were playing sports too. What sports are you playing?
Yeah, so I've coached youth soccer, but coming up in high school, I played baseball, basketball for quite a few years. But as we got into high school, it was either poop or get off the toilet, right? And it's not something I wanted to do full time. So, we played saxophone and learned Spanish and played basketball. So we had a rule in our household. You had to speak the language, play an instrument, and do a sport, right? Oh. And then when you got into high school, you could start to make your own choices. And my choices were, well, I'm going to stop going to class. Well, my dad was working 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. My mom was kind of in and out of the house struggling with her own stuff. So, in short, we kind of raised ourselves for some of those years. But also very, very formative for me. And I wouldn't change it for the world, And so working full time, we had talk of, maybe going to college. I started at a community college, transferred to CU Boulder, got kicked out of there for partying too hard, not showing up to class. And I was essentially 23. I had hurt my hand in a bartending accident. I was unemployed, homeless, sleeping on my buddy's couch. And I just had nothing left. And one night we were just sitting on the couch drinking a beer, talking about, what's next. And military service came up in conversation. And I was like, wow, that might be for me, provide me some structure, which I kind of lacked in my previous years. Yeah. And so I went into and talked to a recruiter, and it was one of the best decisions of my life, for sure.
Before we get to the military journey, I mean, I'm really intrigued by the idea. So your parents had a mindset before you got to high school. You had to learn a language, had to learn to do a sport, and play instrument. I mean, those seem like very good goals for a parent, right? And it also sounds like that they weren't really there for you. And I mean, if you're okay talking about it, I mean, it seems like they had a structure in place was it that you were the third child that they were kind of like, okay, I'm done with it, or was it? I mean, because it seems like two separate kind of things. They had a game plan. They want to get you educated in the world, but they also weren't there for you.
Yeah, well, so they were there as much as they could be, right? So my dad had 2 jobs, so it was really cool. He worked a day job in Denver. So this is back in the day when you had to commute. He would commute an hour, hour and a half each way from Boulder to Denver. Then he'd come home, change clothes, and go work in a restaurant in the evening. You know, he was pulling 14-hour days for most of his life. And it wasn't that he didn't want to be there. We lived in Boulder, Colorado, which is fairly affluent, and they chose to move us there because of really good schools. So formative, you know what I mean, for our upbringing. And then my mom, she was in the home, worked part-time jobs, did a lot of graphic design. She worked for the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics at CU Boulder. Brilliant woman, but also was struggling kind of with her own stuff and was in and out of the house as we were growing up for short and long periods of time. So go ahead.
So, okay, so you're kind of drop out of school because you're partying too much.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a rebellion against I mean, have you ever looked back at kind of why you were who you were when you dropped out of college?
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's pivot a little bit to before I got to CU Boulder. So went to Fairview High School. I mean, it's crazy the people that come out of that school, you know, tech founders, multimillionaires, lots of those kids go to Ivy League. It's just a phenomenal school. And so, you know, coming out of there, we couldn't afford those colleges. And I didn't have a scholarship because I really struggled socially and personally in high school, you know, with drugs and, you know, smoking pot and drinking, that kind of stuff, normal kid stuff, which led to me wanting to go to community college first. I was like, okay, I'll fit in better there. So I would hop on the bus, drive 45 minutes on the bus out to Longmont. I went to Front Range Community College. Amazing experience. I loved it. I fell in love with math, like of all things. I was taking a Calculus 2 course that there were 7 people in the course. I had as much FaceTime with the professor as I needed and did extremely well. I mean, almost straight A's, right? And then I pivoted into CU Boulder as a transfer student. And it was night and day. I mean, I went into my first astronomy course and there were like 250 kids in there. And I didn't fit in. I was a little bit older. I had been working full time for, you know, I don't know, 7 years prior. You know, most of these kids are still wet behind the ears. And so it just was not a good fit. And I was making really good money bartending at Boulder, you know, kind of a college bar and meeting girls and all that kind of stuff. And I made the choice to work and party and not go to class. And I got a nice letter in the mail from CU saying, you know, please don't come back.
So you're talking to a buddy and the idea of the military comes about. I mean, it sounds like someone that has so much quote unquote freedom. I know you're broke, you're still bartending, probably making some kind of money, enjoying your life, to say, okay, I'm going to join the military. That's a drastic way of changing your life. So what was the idea behind that? What was the mindset behind that?
Yeah, gosh, great question. By the way, I have a tendency to jump around, and so you have to just pull me back in if I.
Yeah, no problem.
So, great question. So, what had happened? I was actually, we'll go down one of those rabbit holes. I was shaking the Cosmopolitan one evening behind the bar, and there was a hairline fracture in one of the pint glasses that I didn't notice. It was leaking a little bit. So, what you normally do is you slap the bottom, just gently slap the bottom of the pint glass to read a seal, finish the drink. Yeah. Well, when I slapped it, my hand went straight into the glass, and you can see that finger. That's not.
Wow.
Cut almost the entire finger off. It had to get surgically reattached, pull the tendon out of my hand and everything. That ended my bartending career. Wow. And so, you know, because I was out for months and had to do physical therapy and all that stuff. And that's when I ran out of money, and I was actually sleeping on one of my door guys. His name is Sean, on his couch, and he was prior Air Force intel, and you ever have those experiences where somebody just briefly comes into your life and changes the trajectory, you know, like a comet hitting a planet or something like that, you know? And that's what this was. He briefly came into my life, changed my life, and then just as rapidly exited, right? Mm-hmm. Not on his behalf. I've just been really crappy about reaching out to him. But in any case, he was prior Air Force intel. And he was into physical fitness and it was financially responsible. And I was like, wow, I want to be like that. You know what I mean? And so we started talking. We were actually, with the first conversation, we were on the couch. And then the last conversation, right before I went to the recruiters, we were in a grocery store, 3 a.m, buying supplies for peanut butter and jellies. And because that's really all we could afford.
Mm.
And I was like, what do you think about me joining the Air Force? And I remember his exact words. He stopped, he looked at me, he's like, I don't think that's the worst idea in the world, Dave. And the rest is history. So I like to study. I'm an academic, I think, at heart. I've learned that in my later years. And so I just studied my butt off for the ASVAB, the entry test. I don't think I missed a single question. So they were like, you can do anything you want. And then we'll get into that next 9.5 years here in a moment. I need questions on on that.
No, that's good. So you had the idea, okay, I'm gonna do this and full force ahead.
Yeah.
Now you pass. What do you decide to do in the Air Force?
Yeah, so I was economic minded, right? Like, I'm a shameless capitalist. I believe in a free market economy, and that drives competition and innovation, right? So I was like, what's going to pay me the most on the outside? And I talked to a few people, and they're like, nuke systems do pretty well, right? Because those civilian contractors make a killing. And so I entered, I believe it was nuclear systems specialist as an enlisted guy. I enlisted because I didn't have a degree to become an officer yet. Well, as I'm applying for my, I believe it was a TSSCI clearance, so top secret special compartmentalized information, which I ended up getting later in my career, it was denied. They're like, dude, your credit sucks. Like, you're not paying your bills on time. You've been kicked out of college. I'm like, y'all, yes, on all of the above, I have. And they're like, so in basic training, my TI, the flat brimmed hat guy, comes over to me. He's like, damn, pulls me over, and he's like, hey man, I hate to, he didn't say hey man, but he's like, Airman Tamm, blah, blah, blah. And he was, you've been reclassed. You're not going to be a nuke systems guy anymore because you're going to get your clearance. You're going to be going to fuel systems maintenance. I was like, what's that? It's like, you're going to be crawling around in the dark in gas tanks for 12 hours a day for the rest of your life. Have a enjoy. And I was like, what? So literally I went from the highest one of the highest qualification jobs to one of the lowest qualification jobs, where like the special forces washouts that didn't make it through those courses, all those guys come into like fuel systems. So we're like the land of the misfit toys.
So, I mean, that has to be pretty deflating, and like, this is not kind of the idea of, this is not what I signed up for. So what happened? What happened next?
It was a blessing in disguise. I got to, first of all, I didn't even know what a torque wrench was. Like, I didn't grow up working with my hands per se. I grew up working with my mind, and then in restaurants with my hands, but not on with tools, and definitely not on airplanes. So that was a learning curve for me. Enlisted tech school, it was only 6 weeks, but like a serious learning curve, like learning how to do all of these things. And then I get out to my first duty station, and it was Japan. I was the only guy in the class that got overseas. And I think it was because of the maturity level, right? I think one of the oldest guys in the class, and I did academically pretty well. And so when I got to Japan, it was life-changing. I mean, it was a whole new me, and I could define myself however I wanted. And I was going to be a guy that was in the best shape, worked my ass off. I volunteered for everything, and enlisted, or I went into, I started taking night classes, and I just crushed it. I got airman of the quarter. I finished my course development. It was a 9-month pipeline. I finished it in 17 days. I spent every single Saturday and every single Sunday for 2 years straight at the library. Didn't touch a female for 18 months because I was disciplined and dedicated. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get a couple college degrees, and I'm gonna show them the world.
Who were you looking to show? I mean, what were you fighting for?
Myself. I wanted to show everybody not only that I, David Tamm, could do it, but you also can do it. I mean, I was literally homeless, broke, on a couch with no future, and a month, I don't know, a year and a half later, I was on top of the world. Like, that's what it can do for you, I believe. And the military is not for everybody. I get that. It also has its downside. But free college, free food, awesome gyms, a great community of people that want to make themselves and others better. And so I did. I did 134 college credits in 18 months. Got 2 associates, a bachelor's, most of a master's, and applied to become an officer, and got it picked up my first time around because I studied every Saturday and every Sunday for the qualification test.
Okay, so now you've learned how to better yourself and put yourself on focus. Now becoming a leader of men, right? Now you have to get other people to have that same kind of level of focus. What were the learning curves there?
Brutal, absolutely brutal. one of the hardest things for me is like, my parents didn't yell at me. We grew up in like, when my parents were there, in a very loving household, you know, full of kindness, and you treat it. And so first of all, officer training school was like a slap in the face. It's brutal, right? I can't even remember. It's like trauma. It's like 3.5 months or something, you know, in the Air Force. And I was prior enlisted, so I had all the experience. I knew how to march. I knew how to get yelled at. I knew how to operate on a couple of hours of sleep, you know, all that kind of stuff. But learning to lead other people, to get them, to convince them to do things that they don't necessarily want to do in a way that makes them feel like that it was their idea. You know, it's not manipulation, it's motivation.
Yeah.
You learn that very well. And then I got to be around a lot of terrible leaders. I got to see, especially on the enlisted side, some of my NCOs were horrible, would pick on you, tell you that you're terrible, would try and push you down, hold you back, right? Those are the learning experiences that I think molded me even more, how not to treat people, you know?
So, I mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So you're in essence, pulling someone can be perceived as a negative leader, but allowing them to kind of follow you, kind of good leader. That was kind of like the idea of it.
It's so much more than that. I mean, it's a leadership laboratory. I mean, you're learning every single day how to advocate for, how to motivate, how to stay in front, how to lead from the front. You know what I mean? And oftentimes that requires that you've got to be the guy that's doing those 14-hour days, 7 days a week. Just how it is, man. And you know that. You're in real estate. You grind.
Yeah. Of course, and you always want. I mean, it's a difficult battle for, I think, for a lot of people when they transition from basically doing it themselves compared to actually bringing people on.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've talked to enough people on the platform and just in general that everyone has their own style of doing it.
Yeah.
It's putting the carrots in front of them. Sometimes it's being with them in the battlefield. I mean, so it's really figuring out what's best for, I guess, for yourself. I mean, so you're a leader now.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So did super well in officer training school. And one of the reasons for that is there was a regulation that it was a couple hundred pages that spelled out how things work at officer training school. You can actually find it on the internet. Well, I literally wrote out diagrams and studied it every day, every Saturday, every Sunday, right? So I knew what officer training school was going to hold for me, although it was still a shock and surprise. I crushed it, right? So I was in charge of a bunch of people that were, you know, our lower flight and everything. And as I graduated, I was going to become an air battle manager. So I was going to be a combat aviator on the AWACS platform, which is command and control, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and go down range and get rid of bad people and make sure the good guys stay alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So some rigorous training after officer training school, probably a 2.5, 3 year pipeline of training before you were even allowed to go do the job. Can you imagine? And so it's actual simulation training, flight training, and then you go to, you ever heard of SERE school? SERE?
No.
Survival. It's essentially survival school. So how to evade, escape, and then resist interrogation, torture, that kind of stuff. So went through all of that. Great experience. I mean, I still talk about it today. Of the things that you learn there are absolutely incredible. They stay with you for the rest of your life. And then went to my line squadron. I was stationed out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Got married there, got divorced there. We'll get into that in a moment. But that was home base for me for the next 6 years until I separated, you know, late 2015, early 2016.
All right. So marriage, divorce, I mean, you're in a better place. It sounds like you know yourself more. And I mean, what happens there?
Well, yeah, it's almost not knowing your self-worth and what a good partner to you means. You know, I was still a boy in a lot of ways. You know, yeah, I was wearing bars and I was an officer and, you know, carrying an extra 30 pounds of muscle or whatever. But at heart, I was still, I think, a boy when it came to interpersonal relationships. Maybe some abandonment issues from when I was a child. You know, we talked about that previously.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would date around and all this kind of stuff. But it was never like the one, right? You know, I got engaged briefly and it was like, oh, I don't want that. And we broke it off. And then when we were downrange, I was deployed. My ex-wife, I wish her all the best. You know what I mean? I don't hold grudges like that. And we met, we fell in love, super passionate. And we were like, well, listen, we need to get married because she was a different career field than I. And we were going to get split up. And it was like, we either give it a shot or we're never going to see each other again.
Mm.
And I'm sure for any of the listeners that are like prior military have heard of this or dealt with it themselves. It's horrible, you know? So we did the whole justice of the peace thing, got married, and realized we kind of hated each other. It was a
Oh,
train
wow.
you know, it's you gotta yeah, there's love at first sight and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like you really need to spend some time with someone, you know, for several months if not years, and really get to know them in their good and their bad before you know, put a ring on it. And I'm married again, right? And I'm really, really happily married because I found the one. I found the one that makes me happy every single day and loves me for me, you know.
Well, I mean, and this is just my own nugget on that stuff is, and in business is having some sort of roadmap of what you're looking for, right? Be it in a job, be it in a person,
Yeah,
because after a short window of time, you start selling yourself on why you made the right decision.
yeah.
So unless you have that roadmap or know your worth, like you said, right, you're going to maybe go down the rabbit hole and find out later on you sold yourself on something that wasn't there.
That you articulated that very beautifully, and a lot of times it's like you kind of hope that it'll be different. Like you can't know. Like you need to love this person unconditionally, and if you do not, don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you should start another relationship podcast. Yeah. So we ended up we got divorced, and I had a really rocky exit to the military. Really rocky.
Oh, what happened?
Well, so the the deployment was kind of rough for me. You know, we all did our different stuff. Well, we handled business downrange, and I think it was rough on a lot of people. And then we came back, and uh, it just felt different. You know, it felt different. And the way that the AWACS community works is you're perpetually being kind of like groomed and promoted. You know what I mean? As you promote in rank from, you know, lieutenant to captain major, you're also upping your position into leadership on the jet itself.
Hmm.
So I was going into a surveillance training, which is to be an airborne surveillance guy instead of a weapons guy that was actually controlling assets. And I hated it, man. I went through the entire ground training of it. It was like, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. They spent a ton of money on, you know, what's between my ears. And then we got into simulation flight training, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, because if I finish training, you have to sign another commitment, and then I'll be promoting to major. And essentially, I know where the next 10 years of my life will be. It's going to be on the AWACS. And I felt this steel cable in my heart pulling me away. It was like, you have to go do something else. And I couldn't, it was undeniable. And so I walked into my commander's office, and it had never been done before. And I was like, I want to disenroll from training. I don't want to do this. He's like, no, like, no. And so it's like, well, I read through all the regulations, and I've talked to, you know, the legal services, and I can do this, but it may end up in me like getting completely disqualified, my aviation qualification pulled. That's exactly what happened. I sat in a courtroom for 2 weeks. It's called a flight evaluation board, and they pulled my wings. They're like, you've gone against the grain. You know, you're a traitor, kind of. You know what I mean? Because you didn't do the training, and I had been groomed. I was a top performer. You know what I mean? And they were counting on me, and I walked. You know what I mean? Because I knew I needed to, and that's what set the foundation for the companies I'm building now.
Wait, so
yeah, go ahead.
you did you get kicked out of the military then because of this?
No, I got an honorable discharge. I have combat decorations and, you know, all that good stuff. I left from an administrative and legal perspective. I still have a ton of gold stars. From an aviation community perspective, I walked away from them. You know, and that's okay. I'm at peace with that. You know.
So you left the military. Did you have any idea of what you're going to do next now?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. So my brother he was like, hey man, I've got this idea for a software company, and he knows that I can pick up just about anything pretty quickly, right? From programming languages to business concepts, technology, etc. And so he's like, I'm going to start this company called Firepoint, which ended up being, I don't know, top 4, top 5 real estate CRMs in the country, ended up getting acquired. So I was one of the founding members of that. So I came on board pretty early on. And I think I was number 7 that came in as I was separating from the military, was programmed the back-end MLS architecture, ended up running all their PPC departments, was a director of 3 or 4 different departments there. So yeah, I knew what I was going to do, and it was software. And that led to some of the companies that I'm building now that I think they're going to change the world for good.
Now, in that role, you were an employee, correct?
Yeah, technically I was an employee, but also a co-founder. Yeah.
Okay. So as a, as a co-founder, were you managing people, or was it strictly, okay, you were,
Yeah.
what was the difference between managing people in the military compared to managing civilians?
So frustrating. It's and I deal with it still today of when you're in the military and you're assigned a task, don't make me ask you if it got done or not. It was assigned to you, so it will get done. Let me know when it's not, and if it's not, why? Right? It's just basic human responsibility of being an adult.
Yeah.
Is what I thought, right? And that's how it was in restaurants as well. Yeah, dude, you leave a piece of foie gras in the pan, it's going to melt down. You're going to get yelled at. Don't do it. But that wasn't the case in the civilian side. It was almost like had to go and check up and make sure people were doing their things every single day, because it wasn't instilled in them, right? They would forget. They wouldn't write it down. That frustrated me. And so I had to learn to change my behavior to get the most out of them, right? And sometimes being a hammer is not the answer. Sometimes really trying to get between people's ears and in their hearts to figure out what motivates them is the answer.
Okay. How do you come to that realization, and how long did it take you to come to that realization? Because I think for most people, right, they would go, okay, well, I need to change those people.
Right.
And for the way you articulated it is, I need to change myself to better adapt to them. So was that right off the back, or did that take some time for you to actually realize?
It took years, and it's still active today, right? I'm still trying to polish myself from not just academically, but professionally and spiritually and emotionally to make sure that I'm getting the most out of everybody on my teams, but also the most out of myself. I kind of looked at it like I'm squared away, right? I've got my finances, my fitness, my businesses, my relationship. I'm pretty good of where I want to be. Now I need to make all the people around me that good. And that sounds like egotistical or whatever. It's not. I want to get the most out of people so they can have the most abundant lives possible. And it takes, I'm still working on it today, to answer your question. I don't think it ever ends, because you're always going to encounter a new obstacle, a new person, a new difficulty that is going to teach you something. Otherwise, what's the point of all this? What's the point of just greasing your way through life, coasting? You know what I mean? There's no point.
So is the process for yourself kind of, does it go to frustration, or does it go past frustration? Do you take a step back, assess it, or what's that process look like when you come to something that maybe you haven't dealt with before and you gotta,
yeah. I've surrounded myself with a really strong group of mentors, right? So I've got coaches that work with me on my leadership and management style. I mean, I work with a former executive at Starbucks several times a week, to work on my marketing brain. And then I've got a guy that owns 7 businesses, here in Colorado, an insanely successful guy, and he works on my kind of professional CEO side. Right. And so I've got those different key players to kind of work on myself over time. But when I encounter an obstacle that I don't know within 30 seconds of how to fix, I got a noodle on it. And sometimes it is take a step back. Sometimes it is go ask for help. I also got a small mastermind of other people of our caliber where we're trying to help each other out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Now, you've talked about it. You've started a couple businesses, and I mean, did you sell the businesses? Are you still ownership stake in the businesses, or what's that process?
Yeah, great question. So we were kind of learning as we go, right? So my brother actually worked in real estate, which is where he got the idea for FirePoint, and then I helped kind of build it, bring it to life, and then that's where I learned, the MLS stuff and the Google PPC. Got invited out to Google data center headquarters, all that kind of really neat stuff to get my feet wet in the industry. But when it got to the scale that it was, we're talking thousands of users. We had raised a bunch of funds, and the company got acquired. So we're still the largest common shareholder, but don't have a strategic say in where the company's going. And it's a pretty crowded space. You think about it. Real estate CRMs. I could name 7 off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
But those were the building blocks. Again, going back to that same kind of tenant is the building blocks from FirePoint are what allowed me to step into CAS services and just hit the ground running. build it to what it is today. And then we've had several others that were kind of ancillary to that during the same time period.
So is it more of, okay, I have an idea, or this is what we do here. There's an idea. It doesn't really fit into this place right here, but this is something down the road. Let me put this in a box and come to it later. Or what's that kind of process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have my own personal ice chest of probably 7 or 8 fairly detailed business plans of things that I want to launch. I don't currently have the time, the bandwidth, the resources to do so. So I've got to do 1 or 2 at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so Firepoint, yeah, it was an idea, made it a reality. Okay, so we know that is possible, taking just literally an idea and turning it into a multi-million-dollar, multi-thousand user platform. It's possible in a very short period of time.
Yeah,
right? We're talking 2015 to 2020, and then so we started Cast Services off of an idea, off of, well, there's something here in the digital marketing space, because I personally feel like 99% of the real estate websites out there are broken. And I can explain why. We've got a team of data science PhDs that do research in the space. And so what we wanted to do is, let's provide something in the market that'll actually move the needle, that's accessible. And then during that time, the AI technology and the robotic processing technology has been accelerating at, Moore's law. It's logarithmic at this point, trying to create products and services around those that will really move the needle and actually have them be affordable. So what I would recommend for any of the listeners, if you have a business idea, I believe that ideas are given to you. I believe something greater than us. And I feel like when you're given an idea, it's a test. And are you going to do something with it? Or are you going to sit on it and somebody else will do something with it? Right? Because once the idea is out there, it's out there. And so for me, if I have a really good idea, or I think I have a really good idea, I write it down, I come back to it, I hash it out, I put more meat on the bones, I have actual working documents for each one. And over time, I'll connect with somebody that can accelerate one really, really quickly, or that will help, with a piece of the company. I've got one that I'm building right now. I got 18 team members working on it every single day. Right? Nobody really knows about it, but it will launch later this year, and it's been in the works for 3.5 years.
So you talked about having the ideas,
Yeah.
right? And then, okay, I come across someone that maybe could be a good fit to help accelerate this. Do you ever meet someone and go, you know what, this is a good person, and if I get that idea, I'm going to basically bring them on? Because I remember someone telling me once that every time you find talent, you should look at them and go, either one day I'm working for you, or one day you're working for me. And so is it more about the idea first before you do the talent, or do you always have kind of like talent in your back pocket just in case?
So I've, over my career, I built a Rolodex of pretty heavy hitters in their respective fields, right? I've got an amazing world-class designer. I've got an amazing copywriter. I've got some of the strongest marketers in the country, right? Like the brand manager for Nestle is on our team. So so I have them in the Rolodex, and they've got me in their Rolodex.
Yeah.
And so we help each other on projects from time to time. But if we've got a no kidding, this is a serious idea, there's IP around it, we're filing for patents, we have valuation, it's gonna go, then yeah, that's when we pull the team together, we do some paperwork, and we launch this puppy. Right. And I don't agree with you. I don't agree with the either you're gonna work for me or I'm gonna work for you. I'm building these companies, in one of them where executive compensation is equal for all of us, CEO all the way down to COO to CMO to CFO.
Yeah.
On purpose, right? Because we all have this thing that we want to make a difference, in the world with, and so we're parallel, and that's on purpose. Now, eventually, somebody will have to bubble up and be the CEO or visionary, but yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, for sure it does. Yeah. Now, where do you see Cast Services and yourself going in the next 5 years?
Oh man, well, great question. So when we started Cast Services, it was primarily Facebook, Google lead generation, remarketing, and custom websites. Well, there's so much volatility in the paid lead space with Google and Facebook for various reasons that we'll go down that rabbit hole another time. We pulled away from that. We said we want to take all those assets and we want to roll those into AI and automation. So you know what SEO is? Yeah. So instead of I wrote a book on SEO. Right. Oh, yeah. And it's so the SEO for real estate agents in a hurry, and a lot of
search engine optimization.
Yeah, for those nerds out there. And so a lot of those legacy tasks of having a human write content and then coming and bringing it back, domestic, and having it QC'd and put up on a website, and then having somebody else build the backlinks and all that, you don't have to do that anymore. There is AI that has the ability to do most of that at scale. Right. There's NLP processors right now that can write 500 words of master's level copy in 30 seconds. You don't need to, you know what I mean? And so that, what we said is we're going to use that level of technology in our SEO suite. And then we started looking at the human tasks of updating spreadsheets and making phone calls and text messages and all that, the stuff you need to do to follow up with leads and manage your database. We've automated almost all of those tasks as well. So yeah, we took an individual, he's got about 1,500 to 1,700 leads a month coming into his business, you know, strong 9-figure company annual. And we reduced their operational cost by 70% in 30 days with automation for all of their lead follow-up and admin. Just because we can go in and train AI to do, you want automatic flags when somebody hasn't followed up with their lead in 30 to 45 minutes and then a text message and a report every single day. Yeah, you can have that now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, the more people I get on the podcast, and I don't know, I've had 200 and some here, but the more recently I've heard more and more people talk about AI and how it's bettering their business. And it's, I mean, in 5 years, I mean, I thought it was probably a little bit longer away, but in 5 years, you're going to see almost a lot of businesses have AI incorporated.
So some of the things that we presented a very large summit for real estate. We're at a conference, and one of the things we showed was a full-on robotic AI you can talk to. You can ask about listings, and it responds. And you can flirt with it, and it's trained by the top inside sales agents in the country. Like, that's what we're dealing with today, and it accelerates faster than a human possibly can. And so, using to stand on the shoulders of that technology so you can be more human and focus on your clients, that's the goal. For sure. So where do I see us in 5 years? There. I see us in a kind of an ecosystem of all of the different compartmentalized facets of the real estate industry, mortgage, title, insurance, new construction, et cetera. And they're being an ecosystem where they're all tied through AI and technology, I believe.
Well, thank you, David, for being here today. Thank you for giving, so much insight into who you are and how you got here.
Yeah.
If someone's listening right now and they're looking to find more about CAS services or more about yourself, what's the best platform of them?
Yeah. If you go to our website, cast.services, any of the lead forms on any of the pages, just fill it out, say I'd like to chat, or my personal email, david@cast.services. Just drop me a line.
And again, if you're listening, it doesn't matter where you are today. I mean, I know his story, David's story, was talking about he was 25 when he was in that rut right there. You can be 30 in that rut right there. Maybe you just need a kick in the butt and get back on track, and you can be wherever you want to be. So don't worry about where you're at today.
Yeah.
Just matter where you want to be tomorrow or the next day. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe, please share, and go find CAS Services. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.